edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. We have a very exciting show today. Mr. Gerald Schwebel of IBC Bank in Laredo and the Border Trade Advisory Committee is going to be joining our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez in just a few minutes to talk about all the things happening all along the border. But first, let's take a look at some headlines making news across the border, starting with the nationwide crackdown by Homeland Security on immigrant farm workers. It is causing labor shortages at farms throughout the nation. We've been telling you about the labor shortages we've been seeing down here in the Rio Grande Valley, and that it would be a matter of time before they started happening all across the country, which could ultimately affect putting food on our tables. Now, farmers from across South Texas met this week looking for solutions as the farm labor shortages continue. One of the main topics on the table is the H-2A program, which allows farmers to bring in temporary foreign workers when there aren't enough U.S. workers to fill seasonal jobs. But many growers say the program is too expensive, raising concerns as harvest season approaches this fall. Sarah Black with Great Lakes Ag Labor Services says the program needs to be modernized to help current farmers.
Congress has never updated it in the last 40 years. The last time they updated the program was 1986. So you can probably tell me that there's not very many things today that are the same as they were 40 years ago. Definitely not on farms. So you have this program from many years ago that wasn't designed for today's agriculture and that has all these different things in it that they have to do that don't make sense.
Black and others say that changes are needed to establish a reliable workforce, as the program will be one of the paths forward for agriculture businesses in the region as the immigration crackdown continues. Time now to bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, and our guest for today. And Sandra, I'll let you introduce him.
Right. Thanks, Rudy. We have with us Gerald. We call him Jerry Schwebel, Executive Vice President of International Bank Commerce in Laredo, Texas, border city right across from Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. Mr. Schwebel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're also sit on the you're a trade ambassador named trade ambassador by the Laredo Economic Development Corporation in 2024, and you sit on the the Border Trade Advisory Committee, which met last week in Austin. It's a state committee. So let's start off with that. Met August 12th. Let's start off with that. Tell us, sir, what was the main topic happening at that committee meeting, and did you have any solutions or goals coming out of it?
Sure, Sandra. Well, so the Border Trade Advisory Committee goes back to really 2001 when it was created by the legislature and created also to support the Texas Transportation Commission, Texas Department of Transportation, Secretary of State, in being able to share and communicate to those agencies the role and the importance of border communities and the role that we play in the needs in order to really enhance infrastructure, the commerce between Texas and Mexico, and it's a coordinated effort of representatives from throughout the border, from El Paso to Brownsville. We meet basically on a quarterly basis in Austin or at a border community, and it's a great communication avenue so that our governor and our Secretary of State, TxDOT, can hear from the stakeholders, those of us that live and work on the border, to understand clearly how best we can plan for future infrastructure needs or trade facilitation for the future.
So let me guess. I bet that the 25% tariffs with Mexico is something that you all have been talking about. Right now, we're in a 90-day pause. Well, it's been flip-flopped. The Trump administration has said that there would be imposing higher taxes, not imposing higher taxes. What is this doing for planning purposes? What is this doing to the border economy and relations with Mexico right now?
Well, from the perspective of those of us at the border, there was a panel of a group of us that spoke included from representatives from El Paso, from Laredo, and from the Rio Grande Valley. We had Tecno Garcia from Mission Economic Development. We had John Barella from the El Paso Borderplex. Jerry Maldonado was also on the panel. He happens to be the president of the Laredo Motor Carriers Association, and yours truly on the panel. I happen to also wear another hat besides being on the Border Trade Advisory Committee. I'm also on the U.S. Mexico-Economic Council as part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, where we are addressing all of the issues related to the impact of the tariffs. The discussion was pretty general. It focused, quite frankly, on measuring what impacts we were seeing, and it's not. I think the discussion focused more of understanding that level of uncertainty that seems to be still present with the whole rhetoric of tariffs is what really has been more of a impactful scenario that we're facing. People will hold back from making these decisions, businesses. And the reality is that when we really pull back and understand the whole structure of tariffs, we got to go back in history because understand we lived with tariffs before NAFTA, and NAFTA was intended to be a framework agreement where you could reduce and have a level playing field of reciprocity in zero tariffs eventually. But the message is clear that it's not so much even the tariff itself as to what's going to happen and how long the tariffs will be in place versus the tariffs itself. We at the border have always said we're resilient. We adapt. Just tell us what it's going to be and we will move forward.
So the real impact is this uncertainty, this living in these uncertain times is affecting the economy. It has to be affecting businesses as they plan who they're going to hire, how they're going to hire, how much they're going to buy, how much they're going to ship from Mexico, right? I mean, you can't plan if you don't know how much it's going to ultimately cost.
That's correct. We're fortunate that we do have a free trade agreement, USMCA. And when you look at measuring which are the tariffs that are non-USMCA compliant, those are the ones we tend to focus in. And then we add the additional tariffs of steel and aluminum and copper. And we try to understand really what's flowing through our borders, through our 28 ports of entry, and not only what the impact is on the border, but what the impact is on Texas, which is more equally important given that Mexico is our state's number one trading partner,
right?
So that trading partner, and you look at that flow of commerce, and it's still vibrant, it's still there. It does not come to a halt. It's still flowing, and we try to measure what is happening when there's a slowdown in the truck traffic, which we measure a lot of it by truck traffic, or there's a slowdown on some of the economic development activity. All of those are the tools that we're constantly having to measure so that we can report back to the powers that be.
You mentioned truck traffic. You also use the word vibrant. I mean, you're very optimistic because we've heard a lot of gloom and doom from many other people. You seem very optimistic. Tell us what has been the impact so far on bridges, trade, cross-border traffic, and keep in mind Laredo has the World Trade Bridge, the number one port on the southwest border for commercial vehicles, right?
Correct. So we've got our commercial bridges, which is the World Trade Bridge, and we have our Columbus Solidarity Bridge. So yes, we measure the activity by the volume of trucks, and we've been averaging anywhere between 16 and 18,000 trucks at any given. When you talk about how many a day.
Wow.
And it works both ways. Kind of go half and half. 9,000, or 8,000, 8,000, and that
fully loaded could be loaded. Because we
exactly.
over here in the Rio Grande Valley just have empties, one way. You guys have the whole package.
Yeah. We have a combination. We have a combination because we have the drayage operations, and we have it's a combination. But we also have rail, and we also have, of course, our commercial air cargo facility as well. So all in combination, that multimodal capability is what allows us to retain that strategic location of the Port of Laredo. But yes, we are having to track it. The numbers have been holding steady throughout the course of the year. There's been a slowdown in the last 2 months, again, as a result of the length of that level of uncertainty that I was sharing with you earlier. So if it would have said today, the tariff as of today is going to be 10% or 15% or whatever, 25%, and it'll be like this for the next year. Where like I said, we would adapt and adjust, our strategic model to that. But when we're waiting to see what's going to happen, then that's what really makes some of the businesses hold back. That doesn't mean that people are stopping to do business. It's not happening. The truck is flowing very well. We still have to have food. We still have to have products, and the consumer needs those products at an affordable price.
You mentioned rail, and one of the very ambitious plans that you have there in Laredo is this futuristic rail model where I've actually written about it. It's on borderreport.com. It just seems like something from 100 years ahead of its time, right? Where these modules will automated cargo units will cross, and it will be, as I understand it, over the current rail bridge, correct? And how?
No. Let me clarify.
Yeah,
you're talking
tell us about this.
You're talking about the Green Corridor, the Green Corridors project.
Yeah, tell us about this new rail project.
Well, this project came about. Really, the idea came out of the Texas Transportation Institute about 3 years ago. I serve on that advisory board for TTI, and in addition to that, it was presented at a BTAC meeting and a Freight Mobility Committee meeting as well. The concept has a lot of merit from being able to address the issue where you have levels of heavy congestion. So the model was proposed as a pilot project that's being proposed right now, would be at the Solidarity Bridge. That's where it would be, and it would basically will be an over a upper level deck where you will have these basically cars where you could fit a tractor trailer, a trailer or container in that would be able to flow from one side of the border to the other.
Without the wheels and the driver, just the container.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's totally automated, and therefore, but again, now the concept is being expanded. That whole imagine, and it's hard to describe it because it doesn't exist right now. But if you look at a SkyTram in the Dallas Fort Worth Airport, or you look at these kind of monorails that may exist in other places, but these would be for tractor trailers, commercial trailers, and they would be able to be used by those trusted shipper companies that could be able to flow their container from one side of the border when you have the congestion or when you have any issues on the border. That's the concept. It's being reviewed and it's being discussed with all the stakeholders, and there's more information to come as they've got their presidential permit in June,
Right.
which is significant in itself. And that's the first step. Now becomes the planning and the design, the feasibility, and where everybody understands clearly how it will enhance the whole flow of legitimate commerce and trade.
I want to explore the presidential permits a little bit more in a bit, but I think Rudy has some.
Yeah, that's right. We got to take a quick break. We're going to continue this conversation with Mr. Gerald Schwebel of IBC Bank Laredo, a man who wears many hats, including sitting on the Border Trade Advisory Committee. So stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and joining me and South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez today is Mr. Gerald Schwebel of IBC Bank Laredo and the Border Trade Advisory Committee.
Jerry, earlier before the break, you were talking about the permit that was issued for the futuristic rail, and of course, we're still in the planning stage. But Webb County, where Laredo is, and along with 2 other counties in South Texas, the 3 counties have a very special agreement that Congress has allowed approval for this fast-tracking bridge permit process that allows the planning to go through, these presidential permits to be issued. We have another one issued earlier this week here in Brownsville, while the NEPA environmental process is still going on. So how is that helping the economy? How is that spurring trade there in Laredo?
Well, it's definitely been a major development thanks to a bipartisan efforts of starting with Senator Ted Cruz and on the Democratic side, Congressman Cuellar, together with Tony Gonzalez and Monica de la Cruz, and a whole group
Bipartisan,
totally bipartisan initiative that allowed 4 projects initially that had been, for all intents and purposes, been stalled in the White House and would not be released because we couldn't get a decision on why these projects could not move forward. They were very much needed. They included a project, like you said, in Maverick County, the Puerto Verde project. It included 2 projects in Webb County, the Bridge 4-5 project, which is a private public partnership as well, like it is like the Puerto Verde and Maverick County. It included an expansion of the World Trade Bridge, which is the #1 commercial port of entry in Laredo. And you had Cameron County with their bridge as well. So once the legislation was passed and allowed to accelerate and give a quick response to the approval process of the presidential permit, allowing for the permitting review to continue thereafter, as was done, quite frankly, during the first Trump administration with the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Southern Rail Bridge in Laredo as well. That became the model for these other 4. As a result of that, other applicants have submitted and are in the process of getting their presidential permits, and some are being approved as we speak today, including the most recent one for the Gateway Bridge in down in Brownsville.
Right. The pedestrian bridge was just a presidential permit was issued earlier, just recently. The World Trade Bridge is going to expand. Can you tell us a little bit about that expansion? How many lanes will it be ultimately?
Sure. So the World Trade Bridge will have 10 additional lanes.
Wow.
So you're going to go from 8 lanes to 18 lanes. There's additional presidential permit that dedicated for the Solidarity Bridge, the Columbia Solidarity Bridge. We're going to add some additional lanes to that as well, in addition to the other projects as well.
And that bridge, for people maybe not familiar with the border, connects actually Nuevo León to Laredo, because Laredo is on the Texas side is so big, but there are actually 2 states in Mexico. It will connect to Nuevo León, and whereas the other bridges connect to the state of Tamaulipas. So that's really opens up the Mexican market there, right?
And it's really, and the message behind all of these processes and all these initiatives, whether they come from the state of Texas or they come from the federal government or they come from, an ongoing dialogue of discussion, how do we best address the need for the adequate infrastructure on both sides of the border between Mexico and Texas and the whole North American region that allows us to have legitimate flow of commerce and trade, so that we as a region, we become more competitive with Europe and the Far East. But we need that infrastructure. And we know, and in particular, I think it's important to note that government can't pay for everything. So now we have to look beyond that and look at these also private sector being involved in the project, like they are in Webb County and in Maverick County, and even the Green Corridors project that you were addressing earlier, where you take innovation and technology and have private sector also invest in this infrastructure that we have for the border.
2 things I also want to get to, because we could talk forever. I wanted to talk about the U.S Mexico-Canada Agreement. The USMCA is actually up for a mandatory review in 2026. Do you think the recent tariffs and discussions are in any way going to threaten this agreement change? Some people have said that the recurring tariffs and the politicization of trade may actually cause a renegotiation of this agreement, that it's not just going to be renewed. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm heavily involved in this. I'm fortunate that I was involved in the first NAFTA back in '93, and then I was involved in the USMCA as part of the Texas Association of Business and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I'm still involved, with the U.S. Mexico-Economic Council. And I happen to be in the working group for what we call Trade Policy Working Group for the U.S. Chamber, where we are addressing the review of the USMCA. The review of the MCA, technically, the review process begins the first week of October. And it'll take a period of 240 days up to July, where the anniversary date of first 6-year review it ends. So the dialogue, for all intents and purposes, has begun. I see it as a review. We may need to review and negotiate some parts of chapters of the agreement that need to be tweaked, updated, discussed. Rules of origin, for example. We may have some agriculture issues between the three countries. 6 years may seem pretty fast, but there are issues that still we need to address. And the idea here is that we do have an agreement. It's a framework agreement. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it's a set of rules that we're going to work. Whether we become, with some form of tariffs, we want it to be, zero and remain there. I'm not a tariff person, but I do believe that we've got to be at the table and make sure that what we've enjoyed for the last, 30 some odd years of really open trade and fair trade continues, and we make sure that everyone is compliant as well.
How does Mexican President Sheinbaum's government feel about the renegotiations, and how does the lack of water Mexico's paid the United States play into, or does it at all play into any of these renegotiations? In October, we end the 5-year water cycle, International Boundary Water Commission cycle. Mexico is behind less than 1 million acre feet, but it's been a struggle, and it's affected farmers, ranchers, everyone in South Texas, as you know.
Sure, and like I was saying, the USMCA is a framework agreement. It doesn't solve all the problems that we may have in a bilateral or trilateral relationship, but it is an opportunity as well that the way that President Trump is using all of our trade policies and the trade agreements that we have, or the relationship that we have, that there has to be a degree of they could use it as a form of leverage to obtain another objective, right?
Right.
And if we have concerns the way the treaty on our water treaty have not been addressed, then you put pressures by imposing these types of restrictions, you might say, in order to bring folks to the table and have that discussion.
We saw
I'm happy
briefly.
to say that and I'm happy to say that Senator Cruz was in Laredo this week and was sharing with us that has been, an ongoing topic, that President Schwebel has come to the table and offered that alternative, especially for the farmers and ranchers in the Rio Grande Valley.
We did see an example of that. Trump administration withheld it wasn't that much. It was about 2,000 acre feet of water from payment to the Colorado River for the first time ever. And then Mexico suddenly they did make some payment of water because they had owed South Texas water. So that is exactly what you've been talking about, with a little bit of leverage there.
Right, and that's the way it works. Because that's what we have with President Trump. President Trump is basically using all his negotiating skills to bring folks to say, hey, if you stray from what we agreed to do with it, and trade with each other, hey, remember, we've got this agreement. We got to do this. If not, this will happen. These are the consequences.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Schwebel. It's Gerald Schwebel of IBC Bank in Laredo, and a man of many hats, including sitting on the Border Trade Advisory Committee. We appreciate your time today, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right. And stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. What a great conversation we just had with Mr. Gerald Schwebel of IBC Bank in Laredo. And again, many, many hats he wears. It seems like every time we brought up a subject, he's like, well, I sit on this committee and that committee, one of those committees being the Border Trade Advisory Committee. And that is the type of information we are bringing you. We're keeping you informed on the stories that are shaping the U.S.-Mexico border with interviews and conversations like that. And now, if you want to stay up to date, you can do that while on your commute home, or maybe you're walking the dog around the block, or maybe while you're washing the car outside in the driveway. You can listen to Border Report Live in podcast form. You can get that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as the iHeartRadio app. Now, before we go, we wanted to remind you to check out our partners over at Political Power Ranker. Now, Political Power Ranker is a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. Nexstar's Director of Political Content, Chris Berg, and Director of Emerson College Polling, Spencer Kimball, break down who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on data. Now, this week's episode of political power ranker is going to be, we've got some new Emerson College polling on the Ohio governor and Senate races. Are you seeing a trend here with the places we're following? California, Texas, Ohio, everything that is going to be playing a big role in the upcoming elections over the next couple years. So make sure to check it out. Political Power Ranker. You can find that at abc27.com or check your local Nexstar station's website. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. For Sandra Sanchez, our South Texas correspondent, I'm Rudy Mideles down here in Harlingen, Texas. We'll see you next time.